Good morning, guys. So we are going to continue further with our eye drawing today. And we left off yesterday just doing the fade in the iris, which again is going to be one of the trickiest parts of the drawing in terms of shading, right? So hopefully you have a nice even fade where it doesn't look like it stops and changes really abruptly. We want it just to kind of melt into those lighter values. Okay, so again, it is a little bit tricky. Hopefully you took your time and have a nice fade. So once we have that fade completely finished, clean up your edges with an eraser. Make sure we have a nice edge on the outer part of the iris. And now what we're going to do is start adding in some texture into the iris itself. If you've ever looked at detailed photography of eyes, you can see that there's a ton of detail and texture inside of the iris. So I'm going to show you guys two different techniques how to create some of the texture inside of here. Okay, the first one is what we're going to call a subtractive technique. So we're actually going to be erasing out or removing some of the graphite that we drew down. So make sure that you have an eraser. A newer eraser is going to work better because it's going to allow you to be more detailed rather than if you have one that's been used up pretty well, okay, because it's not going to have a nice sharp edge to it. Okay, so try to get a newer eraser, and what we're going to do is, again, we're going to erase out nice and thin detailed lines from the iris. Okay, and we want to come straight out from the center of the pupil, and we don't want to make them all the same length and size. Have them start and finish in different spots so that it looks a little bit more realistic and natural. Now, one thing that's going to happen is your eraser is obviously going to start to lift up some of this graphite. So you could just have just a scrap sheet of paper and clean it off with that, or you could kind of swirl it in the palm of your hand, and that's going to take off some of the graphite so that you can erase out a lot nicer. So work your way around and erase out some of these lines. Again, have them be different lengths and sizes and have different starting and ending points so it looks a little bit more realistic. Now, sometimes they're not going to be necessarily completely straight. Some of the photos of eyes that you look at, they might be a little bit more organic and curving or even more circular. Really just depends on the person. Okay, but even just adding those couple lines in starts to make this look a little bit more realistic. All right, so that's the subtractive method. Now we're going to do an additive method, shading these in the same way that we've been working on the drawing already. So we're still using the pencil on the side, and we don't necessarily want to trace around these light areas, but what we're going to do is add in kind of some swirling lines. So all I'm doing, again, is using my pencil on its side and making some line work to add in a bit more detail into this iris, right? We don't want to make it too dark and too noticeable compared to the value of the iris that we have down, but we do want to add in, like I said, just a little bit more detail and texture. Okay, so I would work my way around and I would add that texture in all the way. Okay, so that's the first thing that I would like for you guys to do today. And then the next thing is we're going to be working on the eyelid. So we're going to start by just filling in the whole eyelid with a nice light value. So a consistent value across the entire eyelid. That should be nice and light to begin with. All right, once we have that light value across the whole eyelid, now we're going to make our eyelid darker at the top and gradually fade lighter. But the darkest value up here, we want to be a little bit lighter than what we did for the iris, okay? Because we want the iris to stand out a little bit more and be more of a point of emphasis. So we're going to make that be a little bit darker than our eyelid up here. Right? So this is going to be darker at the top, like I said, and then gradually fade lighter as it's coming down. Okay, so I'm going to continue to work on that and adding in some of my detail lines on here. I'll post a photograph of my finished steps so you guys can kind of see what it's going to look like. And then again, just like we've been doing, take a photo of yours and post that into the assignment when you get finished. All right, any questions, make sure you email me and have fun.